Good morning, everyone. Suzanne Taylor King here for another Friday episode of Unlock Your Way with STK. And I am so excited for today's conversation with Stephane Duret. He is a motivational life coach and the founder and executive director of Kaiser's Room. Welcome, my new friend.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This is a really wonderful opportunity to chat, and I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I love how we got connected. You know, most people that know me know I love connecting people and love introducing people. And a long time connection of mine from New York, who now lives in Washington State,
Correct.
Matthew Hagum,
hmm
said to you about me and my coaches group, and you trusted and you showed up to the best conversation I had all year with my
Oh,
two mentors on pricing. And yeah, I hooked you in.
oh my gosh, it was really remarkable watching you and those two powerhouses
Mhm.
kind of volley with each other. There
Yeah.
was no pretense. There was no, everything was just very matter of fact,
Mhm.
natural, organic. It wasn't preachy. It wasn't condescending
Yeah.
because in my experience, I'm still a relatively new coach officially. And a lot of people can be a little condescending, and it's like,
Mm.
well, I do this, and like, it depends on if you want to do that. I guess that's a thing you can do, but like this is, and it's like, where is this coming from? Like, why do we have to be this way? So the fact that you all were so welcoming and just very matter of fact about the way the industry works and the way you operate in it and the way you support one another, I was like, this is yummy. So I'm really, really appreciative that Matthew
Oh,
told me about you and all that you do and share. So
thank you. Thank you so much. And that feedback more than any money that comes from, conversations, it means so much to me because there's so much misinformation,
mm,
about having a coaching practice, about, getting clients. And I don't even say getting clients, I say creating clients because
mhm.
I really, and that's from the Prosperous Coach book, and it just resonated with me that you don't go out into the world and get. You go out to the world and create. And
Yeah.
you are such a creative person. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Gladly. My background is actually in the performing arts. I'm a musical theater performer by
Mm.
trade, and I actually spent 2.5 years in the Broadway company of Kinky Boots. Um,
Wow.
yes, so I was the Lola cover and the male swing. So
Mhm.
I understudied 8 tracks, one of which being the grande dame herself.
Mhm.
And I really love, I've recently decided that I have a mission in life, and that
Okay.
is to create the space for self-expression, self-acceptance
Mm.
and self-expression. And I do that with all of the things that I do.
Mhm.
For a while I was feeling a bit jumbled and a bit disjointed.
Okay.
I've got this performing arts career, and I've got this nonprofit that does performing arts programming for people on the autism spectrum. And
Mhm.
then I've launched this life coaching practice, this motivational life coaching practice. And these things all couldn't seem more different. But to me, it's all about creating the space for self expression.
Yeah.
I do that from the stage as an actor working on my characters, holding a mirror up to society, who's the audience. I
Mhm.
do that by creating inclusive spaces for my autistic students where we can explore our emotions, we can explore our self expression, and we can have autonomy of ourselves and the things that we do through the performing arts, because that's magic.
Mhm.
Just as well with the motivational life coaching, like we have to set into ourselves
Yeah.
and figure out what it is that we really want. because we've inherited some structures where we're supposed to produce and be productive and do the things that we're supposed to do, as opposed to do the things that we feel called to do in the ways that we want to do them. So for me, the creation of that space, so it's really interesting going back to creating clients.
Mm-hmm.
It's really so rich, because that's what it is. It's a sharing, it's a
Yeah.
community building, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's loving and being loved, and that's the magic. So that's kind of like a recent, probably in the
Well,
past.
I love that you found what I call the through line.
Mm,
You found that connection piece
mhm,
between your talents, the things you love to do, and your work. And that is so, so beautiful, because so many people go through having a business or a coaching practice or, any type of business,
mhm.
and they never connect with that through line.
Yeah.
And that's where great content comes from. That's where great conversations come from. You can talk to more people about what you do because of that.
Mhm.
It's really, really great.
Well, you can talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the magic. It's not being intimidated or afraid to say the right thing to the right
Mhm.
person. And well, this type of person is going to think this, and this type of person. It's too much. I think it's too
Oh,
much.
I think it's way too much.
You know?
And I remember the day that it disappeared, and I was sitting journaling about something, and I had been doing a lot of work on that, you know, no, not only knowing myself, but quieting down the negative. Oh, you can't talk to that person, or you
Mhm,
can't say that to that
mhm.
person, right? And all of a sudden, got to a certain point in doing the work, and that voice was gone. And I was like, oh boy, there's space now
Yes.
to create conversations with more people.
Yeah.
And that's actually when I started Coaches in Conversation that you
Mm,
came to. I've been doing that for 3 years. And my idea was to have the conversations nobody's having on social media or in their content, because everybody wants to look perfect on
of
social
course.
media, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I make $1 million a year and look at me, I'm perfect, right?
Mhm,
I don't
mhm,
make any mistakes. And I invited 4 to 6 coach friends of mine.
mhm,
And at the end, we talked about pricing,
mhm.
weirdly enough. And at the end, they said, "What are we talking about next month?"
Uh-huh.
And I thought, all right, I'm on to something,
Yeah.
right? And I found that through line, that connection between my zone of genius and
Mhm,
actually, having conversations and putting them out into the world, which
mhm.
I think I might secretly be a Broadway performer or a stand-up comedian or something. There's something in here
Oh,
that
you're
might.
absolutely a performer. Absolutely a
Yeah,
performer.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I like I like the idea of so much of social media is a performance,
Mhm.
right? How does that resonate with you? Like going out into the world as a coach now, putting content out there. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's such an amazing question, because I have a personal turmoil with social
Mm,
media. Uh,
mhm,
because again, as a performing artist, that
mhm.
quickly shifted to becoming your resume or your
Yeah,
portfolio.
yeah.
And now I had some friends that, were going to audition for Broadway shows and weren't allowed to audition because they didn't have enough followers.
Oh.
And it's constantly this, like, this perfection. Well, this is what I look like, and this is how I'm doing this, and like everything is perfect. And
Mhm,
that's so distasteful for me. One of the things that I also recently realized that I've been doing for a very long time is I really have been marching to the beat of my own drum.
mm.
And it's so funny, because I would get frustrated and say things like, "I'm just tired of doing what is expected of me. I just don't want to do the things that the way everybody wants me to do them."
Oh,
And then I
yeah.
realized a couple years ago that, like, I never really have. I've always done my own thing.
Mhm.
So because of that, I was very anti-social media. I was like, I'm not putting that fake front out. I'm going to be real. And I think that's one of the things I love about being in community and in spaces with you, because
Mhm.
you not only are your authentic self,
Mhm.
you make it okay for others to be their authentic selves.
I never thought about it that way, but I guess, you know, and it's taken a lot for me to kind of be okay with the organic and the, you know, somebody said to me yesterday, he doesn't do live videos
Uh-huh.
because he teaches people how to speak and do videos. And
Right.
so his need to be edited and perfect. And I was like,
Mhm.
no, no, you'll have 100 times more clients
Right.
if you don't edit things. Hence why my podcast is live and
Mhm.
an organic conversation. Like we're sitting at Starbucks having a cup of coffee. Where
Yeah.
does the conversation go? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 40 minutes? Is it an hour and a half? Who cares?
Right.
Right. And I think there's something, I don't know, magical about connecting with somebody at that level where uh, can you imagine if I had asked you, what questions do you want me to ask you?
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Oh.
Well, and a lot of people, I don't want to discount those people necessarily, because there
Mhm.
is a level of safety there, right? There
Yes, of
is a
course.
level of I know what to expect. Working
Mhm.
in the neurodistinct world, sometimes knowing what's coming next is
Mhm.
really soothing to the nervous system.
Yes, absolutely,
So I get that.
absolutely.
And there's something about being raw and organic. It's so
Mhm.
interesting. I don't know who that person is that you were talking to that talked about needing to edit their videos. But
Mhm.
it's interesting how it's like, now you're not quite practicing what you preach.
Yeah.
If what you do is coach people to speak freely, to speak authentically, and
Mm.
you're going back and editing everything,
Yeah,
then what is the role model? Like, what are you actually
right.
exhibiting here? So it's a really interesting point.
So I felt as though, there was a disconnection for me numerous years ago. I was a health coach when I first came into the online space,
Hmm.
and I would do like crazy videos, like exercise things before and afters of clients. And then that kind of seemed like, well, every health coach does that. How do
Hmm.
I be different? Well,
Right.
I started talking about the mindset that was
Mhm.
required to change your diet, change your thinking about food, change your thinking about exercise.
Mhm.
And that formed a Facebook group that was called Powerfully Positive. And it wasn't just food and exercise, it was health here and
Right.
health down here follows, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I just start I didn't have a brand or
Right.
like marketing. I just started talking about what I believed in this. Why were my clients more successful?
Mhm.
Because we talked about all the things going on up here.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's so magical, and
Yeah.
I think we as a species, as a society, I think we're really shifting back to this way of really kind of getting to the nitty-gritty, really getting to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
A person that I just recently connected with, shameless plug, Angela Dene,
Uh-huh.
is out of Angela Dene's studios, is a stylist.
Mm.
And it's not just like, what clothes am I putting on my body?
Mhm.
Anybody can get a couple bucks to be like, yep, here's a dress, put this on.
Yeah.
The work that she does is really like, how do you get comfortable in your skin
Mhm.
so that you can then decide what form of expression or what you're going to use externally to kind of
Mm.
express yourself? But it starts with the self as
Mhm.
opposed to the clothes. So it's this, I think we're thirsty for it,
Yeah.
because this world is a little tenuous at the moment. There's a
Yeah.
lot happening. It's very tense. It's very confusing. especially in the arts world, in the nonprofit sector, funding is fleeting, and nobody knows where paychecks are coming from. People are losing jobs, and there's so much uncertainty that the ground feels unstable.
Yeah.
So this coming back to self, this coming back to center, this talking about this before we start talking about anything else. I really feel like there's a desire and a need for that today. And we're on that mark. You're like way ahead of it. So,
well, I feel as though that was the journey for me. I mean, I've been a coach for 16 years, and people who met me last week, they're like, oh my gosh, she's an overnight success. No, trust me, no, that's not how it works. And, comfortability, Mary, who you met, my 80-year-old coach mentor, she said something about clothing, right? And it's funny that I showed up today for this in a pink shirt. And it was super pale, right? And I looked like all one color. And I said, wait, I'm going to go change my shirt because I know that this is my color, right? So go put it on. And so feeling comfortable is important, and knowing yourself, so important. But Mary said to me, when in your life did you make the most money, at one time? And I said, I was 24, owned stores, and somebody came along and wanted to franchise our concept. And in that conversation, I probably made $5 million was my takeaway, right? I was wearing jeans, flip-flops, and a Indian motorcycle t-shirt. And
that's amazing.
She pulled that out of me. Like, what were you wearing then? Like, she wanted my vibe and my image. And she said, that's how Mark Cuban dresses. Jeans, flip-flops, t-shirts. She said, often the most casual person in the room is the most underestimated. She said, I like that vibe for you.
Yeah.
And it was like I got a permission. To dress however I wanted. And it was amazing to have that.
That's a power move. Because again, at this point, we're talking about sovereignty.
Right.
You're talking about you taking ownership of your life and saying, to hell with it. This is the vibe. Take it or leave it.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the finances. It has nothing to do with the business savvy or this brand that you had, this thing that you'd created that somebody had interest in franchising.
Right.
That had nothing to do with the way you looked, but you felt comfortable.
Yeah. Comfortable enough to sell myself and believe in myself at 24, right?
Right.
And there was a time, in the online space that comparisonitis kicks in, and, this person has this and this person has this, and that can be so damaging for anyone really in the online space. I want to know, I think, how you got to that place of, whether it was high school, college. When was that time for you when you just said, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to be, and you embraced it?
Yeah, what an amazing question. I've really been perplexed. I do a lot of self-coaching. And I was a sad kid. And I keep going back to what made me so sad, because there wasn't anything wrong. I come from a very loving household. There was some homophobia in the household growing up. I started hearing some things that were not great as a young child. I'll disown you if you fall into drugs or homosexuality, as if it's a thing you can trip into. So that had its damages. But everything else was very supportive. My parents were like, whatever it is you want to do, whether we get it or not, you can do. You have our support.
Wonderful.
The choices must be yours. So that was really amazing. But I was constantly comparing myself to people around me. I
Mhm.
was constantly noting that, my brothers were sports guys and I wanted to go to Barbizon School of Models. And, everyone was, into the sciences and I went into musical theater. So
Mhm.
I was always the oddball, also, not being black enough because I spoke the way
Wow.
I spoke and I was fair skinned,
Okay.
not being masculine enough, but like not being a girl. And then I started performing.
Mhm.
And they're like, okay, tall, thin, black guy, you're going to sing tenor. But I didn't really have those notes. And I didn't really dance as well as I was supposed to have, but I didn't sing the way I was supposed to have. I was constantly torn between like, well, I don't
Mhm.
have enough. And you've got it great. And you've got it figured out. And like, you're very clear in who you are and what you do. And like, that's just not fair.
Yeah.
And I was really big into 90s R&B.
Mhm.
So I was thinking about it this morning. Janet Jackson has a song off of her All For You album called Better Days,
Okay.
where
Yep.
she talks
No.
about it's a deep cut. Like a lot
Okay.
of people, it wasn't one of the popular ones off the album. But she talks about like today the sun's gonna shine and it's going to be the start of better days. It was her making this decision of like, yeah, life is challenging, but no one really cares. Just like
Yeah.
do what you gotta do and make the choice to live your true authentic self.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the pivot for me because I was like, nobody really knows what to do with me or where to put me, how to categorize me. So I have to figure it out for myself.
Mhm.
Okay. So here we go. We're figuring it out for ourselves.
Yeah.
And through that, I ended up on a Broadway stage as the
Wow.
star of the show,
Wow.
having all of these things that I was second guessing about myself. So, and
Mhm.
and does it still creep in? Yes. Part of why sometimes social media and I don't vibe because there was an image of the performing artist that I wanted to be
Mhm.
because that person was that way and that person was that way and like I want to take pictures like that too and like what is
Yeah.
that? And
Oh, yeah.
then
I wanted I remember distinctly my first coach I
mhm,
hired, and it came into the online space. She had this outfit on, with a skirt and Louboutins and the Birkin bag and the
uh-huh,
Paris photo shoot, and I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, that's what I have to be."
correct.
That she's so successful, that's what I have to become.
Hmm.
And I was about 4 months into her 10-month thing,
Hmm.
and I got a message asking my advice on something.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. And then 10 of the girls that were in the program
Uh-huh.
were coming to me for social media questions.
Mm.
How do you
Hmm.
do that? And how do you do this? And how do you have a Facebook group? And da 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 da. And I was like, I have been doing this for a long time. Like the
Correct.
doubt that I had because I didn't look like,
Mhm.
right?
And the
And
imposter syndrome.
yeah, totally, totally.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of realizing room after room after room that same thing was happening.
Mm.
People wanted to talk to me. People wanted to ask questions. People wanted that.
Yeah.
And like, wow, okay, I'm just going to own that and,
Yes.
make it part of the package, I guess.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I have to ask,
Yeah.
what started you on all of that? Because you already had a presence
Mhm.
and whatever it was that was, that inspiration where you saw this person, you were like, I've got to be that. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna pay her my money so that she could coach me how to be that.
Yeah.
But you had already had a presence at that point.
Mhm.
So what had inspired that presence prior to you taking this workshop, the 10-month?
I think, well, I was teaching fitness classes.
Mhm.
I was a dental hygienist. I was teaching fitness classes. because I figured might as well get paid to do it. If I'm going to be there taking the class, I might as well.
Right.
Hence the performer in me, right? I might as well be in the front of the room teaching the class and get paid to be here.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And one of the people at the gym, she had a decent presence on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I'm getting clients from it, Suzanne. You really should do it. And I said, yeah, I have a full-time job. I don't need to do that.
Right.
And, you know, eventually I posted one before and after picture of a client of mine,
Yeah.
a woman in her 30s after having children, you
Mm-hmm.
know, before and after. And I focused on her stomach and the changes that, well, it blew up.
Wow.
I
Wow.
still
Wow.
have the picture in my phone to remind me of
You started.
that, right? And so many inbound, like this conversation coming at me instead
Yeah.
of me chasing anyone. And that's what
Correct.
started it.
Oh wow. But it's remarkable because again, you were living your authentic truth. Somebody
Mhm,
gave you a suggestion. You
mhm,
were like, oh, I guess I could do it.
mhm.
So you kind of just like put it together and then it went.
But I didn't know how to do it. See, this is the key. And
Interesting.
I think you do this really, really well. If you don't know how to do something, you figure it out.
Hmm.
And, you know, that's part growth mindset or whatever you want to call it. But
Right.
she said, post a before and after shot on Facebook and see what happens.
Right.
I did not even know how
Right.
to take these before and after pictures and put it in one image.
Right. Right.
Not, you know, this is before AI and all that. I did a Google search
Uh-huh.
how to do before and after pictures
Right.
for social media. I watched a YouTube video and I was like, "Oh, Canva? What's Canva?
Right.
Oh, wow."
There we
And,
go.
you know, just the willingness to learn and experiment. And I'm very tech savvy, but that's not how I started.
Right. But it's also remarkable because that, you know, I don't know how much time it was between that first before and after photo and the time that
Mhm.
you took this person's workshop, but people in the class were already moved by what you had already
Yeah.
created. You were the go-to. You were the expert in the room
Yeah.
because you got to sit into it authentically.
Yeah, I think so.
So fascinating.
Maybe I was the oldest person in the room too.
That
There's
wisdom is
there's
there.
like Chip Connolly, famous author. He just wrote a book called Midlife Manifesto.
Okay.
And as I'm reading it, I'm like, huh, if only I knew this 20 years ago, it would have been helpful, right?
Yeah.
But just this idea that there's so much wisdom in people over 40, over 50, over 60. I have two clients that are over 70, and then
Yeah.
Mary, my mentor, over 80.
Yeah.
So, where do you see yourself in the next 20 years type of
Correct.
thing?
Correct. Correct. And how are you surrounding yourself
Yeah.
by the intergenerationalism, you know? Like how
Mhm.
are you spending time
Yeah.
empowering the future and learning from I
Yeah.
don't want to say the past, but like the elders, the
Mhm.
ancestors, the seniors, you know? Like there's power there. And it's also communication.
Yeah.
You know, how are we just vibing as people on this planet together?
Mhm.
You know, as opposed to let me talk down to you and like now I have to respect you. Let's just be human beings and share the wealth that we have,
Yeah.
you know, because there's wealth to be shared. It's
Yeah, and
wonderful.
I think when you mentioned something about having conversations without expectation of
Mhm.
where it was gonna go, and I think that's so, so important, but yet so difficult if
Mhm.
you're just starting a business
Yeah.
or a coaching practice, and that's that line between chasing clients, "Oh, I have to get a client. I gotta go to this networking event, and I have to get,"
Right.
versus I'm going to go to this networking event and I'm going to provide value to each person I talk to
Yeah.
in some way or another. and
Yeah.
then not caring about the outcome.
Correct.
I think that's really maybe the hardest thing to do when you need money.
Correct.
Money makes the world go round, right?
Correct.
And every person that I've ever coached who's needed clients or needed money, the single thing that shifts the needle is not needing it anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Go get a job. Go get a job. If you need to pay your bills, start
Yeah.
an OnlyFans or get a job
Right.
and make your coaching practice over here.
Right.
Do what you need to do to pay the bills
Correct.
and build authentic connections with
Correct.
create clients instead.
Well, and it really is. It's that abundance mindset as
Right.
opposed to the scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Because there is a level of desperation
Mhm.
that can be smelled
Yeah.
like blood in the water. You
Oh,
know what I'm saying?
well, it's visceral, and when you identify it,
Mhm.
and for those of you listening, you've felt it before when you're with
Yes.
somebody, and the feeling of sales or
Yeah.
the feeling of you need me type
Yeah.
of conversation,
Oh, yeah.
it's so vibrational. Like you recognize it in your body, and that's
Yeah.
what turns you off to
Yeah.
people.
It's icky. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because it can have two faces, right?
Yeah.
It could be the apologetic person who's just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but like this is the thing that I do, and I
Mhm.
think you could potentially benefit from my services."
Mhm.
Or you've got the bravado that's like, "Hey, kid, let me tell you what you need." And it's
Yeah.
just like both of them are actually operating from the same vibration,
Yes.
that desperation.
Yeah.
Neither of them are interesting. They're both turnoffs.
Yeah.
When you can drop into your truth and share, like the world opens up for you.
Mhm.
I one of the things I also teach dance at Marymount Manhattan College, and one of the things I teach my students is audition prep. I
Mm.
auditioned for Kinky Boots for 4 years straight
Wow.
before booking the show.
Wow.
Because I had that desperation, because I was always freaking out, and by the time I booked it, I really think it was my mindset that shifted. I
Mm.
had already kind of downgraded the idea of Broadway. I was
Mhm.
like, "You know what? I just wanna do good work. I wanna do good work on stages and feel good and proud about the work that I do."
Right.
Whether it's on Broadway, whether it's on Bleecker Street, like, wherever it is, I
Mhm.
just wanna, like, do the beautiful work.
Yeah.
I was prepared. I had spent 4 years working on the materials. So when I walked into the space with a smile on my face,
Yeah.
excited for the opportunity,
Yeah.
they asked me, "What do you have?" And I was like, "I've got it all, baby. What do you need?" And they're like, "Okay, can you give us this scene?" I was like, "Absolutely." And I put the pages down and I did them off book. And they're like, "Okay, can you do this scene into this song?" "Absolutely." "Can you
Right.
sing this song down a half step?" "Sure, no problem." And that ease of like wanting to be
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
being prepared, but
Mhm.
not needing a damn thing. I
Yeah.
think that's what tipped the bucket for me.
Wow. So good. So important. And you could take that lesson and translate that into any business at
Correct.
any time you're showing up for a talk or a workshop or making a sale.
Correct.
That's the key right there,
Correct.
is you're prepared, you've done your research, you prepared, you rehearsed probably.
Mhm.
I can see you at home, like, doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then when the time comes, kinda like taking a test,
Right.
I don't need to panic.
No, because
Yeah,
you know what you're doing.
yeah,
And because you're coming from abundance, you're coming from
yeah,
awareness, you're coming from security
yes,
as
yeah,
opposed to grasping at straws. And that's one of the things that I also love about, my history as a performer,
mhm,
because it really does transcend.
yeah,
How are you showing up? How are you telling the truth? How are you listening and responding?
mhm.
Be there with your scene partner. Be there with the autistic child in your dance class. Be there with the networking partner or the potential client or the be there.
Yeah.
Listen, respond, show up, and know what you're doing.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Listen to respond. James Muller, who's here listening, he's a local guy too. So when we meet
Oh,
for
yeah.
coffee, Stephane, we'll invite James. You will love James.
Done and done. I love it.
He said he spent a long time trying to be the next famous figure or hero.
Mm-hmm.
And now he works to be the only me, and
Mm-hmm.
that brings a lot of freedom. And he shows up so powerfully on social media. Like he speaks his truth, good, bad, ugly,
Right.
indifferent, so good. And I've watched it happen with you, James, over the last year, and it's been absolutely amazing. And when I met him for coffee, and it's one of those things, watching someone come
Mhm.
into their own
Yeah.
for me is like the greatest prize of this work. James isn't even a client of mine. I've never pitched him on being a client of mine, but I celebrate in his achievements
Mm-hmm.
because I feel if he just watches me and sees what I do and takes a little piece of that,
Yeah.
freaking amazing to me.
Yes.
Like an incredible responsibility that we
Yes.
have as
Yes.
performers or visible people, right?
Correct.
And I think now I want to know what made you want to add on the coaching piece. What spoke to you with what you do that the coaching piece became obvious to you?
Well, it's funny you should ask. I like to call it an eat, pray, love moment.
Okay.
I
Oh, I
left New
love those. I love
York
those
City.
moments. Oh, can we
Yeah,
talk about that next? Can we talk
that,
about Okay.
absolutely. So
Okay.
I actually moved to Israel. I
Oh.
had done a couple of shows there.
Mhm.
So I performed twice actually. And I just fell in love with the people, and I thought maybe I could do like a performance thing while I was over there,
Mhm.
and I really had time to reflect. And that was in 2013. And that was actually the first time I decided that I was a
Mm.
life coach,
Hmm.
because I've been doing this work. My practice for like self-help and self-coaching started my senior year of high school.
Mhm.
So I was 17, 18,
Yeah.
and I've been doing it ever since. Again, it's all about like shifting paradigms and adjusting your mindset to fit what it is you need,
Mhm.
right? Um, and it's thank you again, James, for being here and for that
Yeah.
note. But it's really that sitting in your truth, thinking
Mhm.
that this shiny thing is what I want, but actually what I want to be is myself.
Yeah.
And making that decision is so powerful. And I feel like I've been feeding myself that for years. And I've been given a couple of great opportunities. Some of my first clients were people that needed that paradigm
Mm.
shift.
Mm.
And first and foremost, they needed to be okay. And one of the things I like to do is normalize the human experience. I'm like, oh, yes, you're a queer woman of color and you've reached a certain level of acclaim. And now you're struggling to maintain it when you don't have to. Our society has put that on you, that now that you've reached this level, you need to keep and stay, but you're exhausted, you're depleted, you're burnt out,
Mhm.
and all you want to do is punch a clock, make some money, and then go home to your family. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I gave her that opportunity to say, you can do that because that's what you actually want.
Mhm.
You've been a founder. You can be a founder again if you want to. But at this point in time in your life, that's where you want to be. Then be there, baby.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what shifted for me. It was just having conversations with people and helping people pivot or wrap their minds around some of their struggles that they're going through.
Mhm.
That's felt so rich. It's
Yeah.
felt so rich. So that's where that's come from. Yeah.
Yeah, I what I like about that is I hear your why in there. I'm wondering if you ever took the YOS assessment.
I don't
Um,
know. I don't think so.
it was inspired by Simon Sinek's work.
Okay.
Um,
Love his work.
I'll send it to you. And
Great.
so now I'm curious. What it does is it tells you your why, what, and how.
Okay.
And when I learned mine about 3 years ago, my why is to challenge the status quo. So that was no surprise. No surprise at all. And then my how is simplification.
Yes.
And my how I do that is through trusted relationships.
Mm.
And I cried. I cried at that. Oh my gosh, that's who I've been my whole entire life. I think about high school. Who was I in high school? I was the class secretary and friends with every clique of people.
Yeah.
The head of
Yeah.
every, back then there was cliques.
Of course.
There was the cheerleaders and the potheads and the
Yeah.
headbangers and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I knew the lead person from each of the groups.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's no different than today, me knowing 300 different community founders.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. I've
Correct.
always been doing the same thing. So that realization is life-changing as a coach.
Gosh.
So
I can't wait to try that. I'm really excited for that because I feel very similarly. And I think this is why it's so funny. I hopped onto that call and I feel like you and I locked eyes through like the virtual world. And we're just like, we're going to have a conversation because like, we just started talking to each other and kind of forgot everybody else was there. But I really I feel very similarly where, and I saw a video back in 2013 that was like, if you can say yes to 7 of these 10 things, you're already a life coach. And one of those things was like, do people often say to you, gosh, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but
all the time.
Yep. And I feel like I've always been that person. And it's, for a while I was afraid to say or to admit that I have superpowers. And this is one of my superpowers. One of my superpowers is that I can see you as you are. And it came from a defense mechanism. As a child growing up in a gay kid growing up in a homophobic household, I thought I was going to be disowned. So I started collecting everyone's baggage.
How old were you when you knew that feeling kind of took over?
Funny enough, I like realized that like I was interested in men probably around 16.
Okay.
That's because a lot before then, probably since I was in elementary school, I would tell myself things that I wanted to believe. Like, I'm not interested in that little boy. I'm jealous of that little boy. I want to be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got to high school that I was like, oh no, I wasn't jealous of them. I was interested in them. But it was really interesting I lost my train of thought. Where was I going? Yes, be the person who people want to talk to and communicate with. So I started collecting people's stuff. So if anybody was ever like, well, you're gay, therefore you should be X-nayed, I would be like, well, no one likes you because of X, Y, and Z. So it became a defense mechanism. And I just became very discerning of, oh, you're insecure. That's why, and you're insecure because of X, Y, and Z. And this is why you lash out in this way. And instead of it being this arsenal of things I had against people, it kind of became my empathy. And it became like, oh, you're not a very nice person because like you don't really know how to love and feel love.
Yeah.
And that's not nice.
Yeah.
So I'm very discerning and I'm very accepting. Whatever it is you got, it's a part of the human experience. It's your truth, it's your reality.
You've always been a life coach then. Like, that emotional intelligence that you developed, even if you did develop it as a defense mechanism, right? It's such a skill, and maybe realizing that it's not common, one of those uncommon common sense things. And
Correct.
to be able to channel that superpower and
Mhm.
trust it
Mhm.
also really amazing.
That's been the biggest thing, is the trusting
Yeah.
of it. Because sometimes it's inexplicable. I mean, do you feel like, because you did train for coaching and like
Hmm.
you've
Hmm.
done that, how
Yeah.
much of the training was helpful and how much of it is still instinctive for you?
I can say I have numerous different specialized certifications, but
Mhm.
the most helpful was studying positive psychology.
Mhm.
So that was not for coaching, that
Mhm.
was for me.
Right.
And I think it gave me so many coaching skills, frameworks, mental studying mental models helped
Mhm.
me be a coach more
Mhm.
than my ICF certification that I got, and I
Interesting.
didn't maintain
Uh,
because I didn't why was I paying $800 a year for a piece of paper that nobody ever asked for?
right.
I don't need that. But I
Right.
thought I needed all those things in the
Of course.
beginning, right?
Of
But I think the most helpful is me learning me and
Mhm.
learning how I think about things and what are other ways to think about things. That's
Yes.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
And a coach a long time ago mentioned, oh, I can't remember his name. I'll think of it like in 10 minutes.
Of
Um,
course.
and it was basically exploring modes of thinking,
Uh-huh.
conscious thinking, unconscious thinking,
Uh-huh.
and the difference between you, your thoughts,
Mhm.
and then who was talking in your
Right.
head.
Right.
Is that you? No, it's not you. And that realization, that's what coaching is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, helping people not listen to that self-created voice and
Correct.
create something more empowering.
Correct. Correct. That inherited voice is what I like to
Right.
call it.
Oh, inherited. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's so, sometimes my voice in there would talk just like my mother.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And being free of that
Mhm. Well,
allows you to create that space for other
and
people.
that's also what's interesting is it's sometimes not necessarily being free of it, but it's being aware of it.
Mm,
You know?
yeah.
Because sometimes these are our guardian angels, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes these are the voice of my mom had two rambunctious boys. We were 11 months apart.
mhm.
And we would go into stores and of course we would like disperse. So
Oh, yeah.
she
Yeah.
had a way of being like, boys, pockets. So we would have to put our hands in her pockets.
Mhm.
So her two hands were free to do what she needed to do, and she knew exactly where each of us was.
Yep.
So that's kind of like a safety voice. So sometimes, or like my grandmother, may she rest in peace, she used to say "sois sage," and that in French means like be calm, be
Mm,
sage, like be wise, be calm, like silence your body a little bit.
mm,
So every now and then I'll hear her voice saying "sois sage,"
mm.
and it's like that's not a voice I want to be free of.
No.
That's a
No.
very important reminder. So sometimes that's there, and I know where I got it from. I'm not gonna make pretend like it's my voice. I know
Yeah.
where that came from, you
Yeah.
know? Now the
Beautiful.
negative self-talk, yes, we'd like to be free of that. But also, I cortisol levels, the fight flight stuff, all that stuff kind of just happens. And
Mhm,
sometimes we have to thank our body. Like, thank you so much for that. There are
mhm.
no saber-tooth tigers. I don't need to run. I'm okay, but thank you, pituitary gland or whatever
Yeah.
secretes all the things. And I feel the same about like the voices in our heads because they have
Mm.
helped to guide us and to shape us. And also sometimes we can be like, thank you, thank
No,
you,
no, thank you.
thank you, no, thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Right, right. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pass on that. I release that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, what's next? What's next for Stephane?
Oh gosh, we've only just begun. I'm excited to have amazing conversations. I'm wondering, I just launched a little newsletter on Substack.
Amazing.
So that's been fun. Yeah, I would love to write a book at some point in time.
Ooh,
I'm wondering
okay.
if I would like to like host a thing at some point in time.
I
I
could
just
see that.
want. Thank you. You're not the first person to say that. Somebody else said that, and I was like, oh, huh, maybe that's a thing for me. So we'll definitely see. But it's, you know, I'm also a father. My husband and I
Congratulations on
adopted
that.
a baby. Thank you. So watching her grow up and supporting her in all the ways that I can,
Yes.
and doing the same. It sounds woo woo, but like doing the same for the world at large.
Yeah.
You know, I think with my positivity and with my availability, sure, my capacity to think of things differently and
Mhm.
to internalize things and then re-release them in a different light. I used to consider myself a tea bag in hot water.
Mm.
Like I just want to permeate the space and have people feel okay.
I love that.
And I want to do that however I can.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this conversation today. I've never had the chat blow up like this. So many good, amazing content. Um,
Yay.
Angelina said, "What a wonderful message you both shared today. Thank you so much." Um, James said, "Oh, the movie A Beautiful Mind. Three very important figures in life weren't real, but they affected him." Yes,
Mm-hmm.
love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of incredible just comments and feedback for you. Thank
Yay.
you so much for joining me today.
My gosh, Suzanne, thank you so much for this space. I mean, talking to you is always amazing. Margaritas next time I'm in
Yes,
South.
yes.
We're making this happen.
Okay. You let me know next time you're in Marlton.
I will. I will. Thank you
All right.
really so much for what you do in this
You're
space.
so welcome. How can everybody get in touch with you?
I'm all over the place. Stephane Duret at gmail.com is the email. I'm on LinkedIn. My coaching practice is called Orange Moon Coaching.
Okay.
So my website, stephaneduret.com/orange/moon. That's
Beautiful.
my coaching site. So I'm all over the place.
All right. Well, now I need to know about Orange Moon. What is that about?
Orange Moon, amazing. You should ask. So Orange Moon is a song by Erykah Badu. I told you, 90s R&B was my thing.
Mm,
And in the song, she says, "I'm an orange moon reflecting the light of the sun." And the story of this song is that there's a moon, or no, there's a sun
mhm,
that's so bright everyone turns away. Nobody can look directly at the sun.
mhm.
And then Erica, being the moon, looks at the sun and smiles.
Mm.
So now the sun gets to be bright, and then the moon gets to reflect the sun. And that's
Aw.
that that's shifting. I felt like I was the sun for a very long time. Nobody knew what to do with me. Nobody knew how to place me. And then I was able to turn into the moon. So now my little tagline is reflecting the light of you, because that's what I do. I can take an assessment of you.
Uh-huh.
Say, this is your brilliance.
Aw.
All of the things that you've done, all of the struggles that you've gone through have brought
Mm.
you to this day. So yes, this might be hard, but it's nothing you haven't dealt with before.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
You're
allowing me
welcome.
to. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone, and a great weekend. See you next time.
Bye.